It is the mythical golden fish of the Zodiac finally making her grand debut into the world of 3D to join the rest of the family. It is PCS00 Pisces, coming with the kit of field control, double charge strain, sea legs, and the leg ability of straight, which passively buffs the success of equipped melee parts just by having the leg equipped. Now, honestly, Pisces is only one of the last couple that we've yet to see a 3D model for at all when it comes to the Zodiac as a whole. But nonetheless, it is honestly fantastic to see yet another join the roster, as not only with the realm of 3D, but to rejoin the family to become someone to join the permanent roster going forward. That being said, field control is a support-based skill that, simply put, kind of is a rather unique skill in particular that we don't see very often. And simply put, what it does is add one additional heavy slot to the legs and also make it a lot easier for them to support any additional heavy parts. So this is a very unorthodox skill in particular, meaning that you don't use it very often on the fact that you really don't want to have to overload legs in the first place when it comes to filling in your heavy limit. However, in rare cases where, say, terrain matchup might not be super great, field control can definitely come in handy to at least alleviate that to a point. Charge Drain is a standard melee-based skill and not necessarily an ailment per se, but one that can definitely be very handy when it comes to stalling Metaforce-reliant fighters and nukers all the same on the enemy side. But simply put, when attacking the enemy, it will sap a small amount of charge from their Metaforce gauges and fill Pisces' own gauge with what was stolen. Basically, this will allow Pisces very passive Metaforce sustain on her own by simply attacking incoming enemies and stealing whatever they accumulate. This can also come in handy in a last ditch or a pike or in a peak effort in order to stall Metaforce nukers, such as, say, if you hit someone at a full charge and steal some Metaforce, that will effectively waste that turn if you can nail them. And then, of course, with the leg ability of straight, this does tie into her kit very, very nicely, given that she honestly will not have a very difficult time missing targets, because she already has a very high success rate of about almost 1,300 each between arms, but the extra boost to this only guarantees that none of her hits are going to miss, and the Metaphor Sustain is definitely going to be one of her 2 games. Now, with this being said, for those that have played Metarot Navi on the GBA years ago, will also come to know that Pisces is capable of meta change, and in this form, her kit really doesn't change too terribly compared to what she had in those days. In this form, however, she will be gaining a kit of Commander, Thunder, Freeze, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Premacy, which reduces incoming damage from attacks from the same leg type. Now, and since a good, I'd say 75% of models out there are all bipedal, this honestly means that against a good chunk of enemies out there, Pisces will have very little issues with passive damage reduction when it comes to tanking hits on the field. But with meta change honestly comes a really big game changer in Pisces' ultimate role on the field, and that is not necessarily as a Metaphor staller as some may think, but instead as a stun locker. Commander is a support-based skill, which is essentially Radar Sight, which is 30% buff to success, plus removal of stealth and conceal effects of the enemy side, but it also grants Pisces a stack of stealth, which means that while through her next cooldown and heat phase, unless she's already being targeted, she cannot be touched or attacked until she finishes her next turn. That honestly does tie in very nicely with her kit of Thunder and Freeze, which are stop and ailment-based skills, which allow her to easily bypass any shields that might be in play that might possibly try to intercept her and prevent her from actually stalling anyone that really does need to be put to a hold. Thunder and Freeze, of course, are your standard stun ailments, Freeze, of course, being the better of the two, as simply put, it will stop the opponent cold and render all hits that land, guaranteed to crit on top of that, where Thunder is essentially more or less the same, but enemies are still allowed to guard and try to deflect enemy attacks to another part incoming. And with the leg ability Premacy, as mentioned, this does tie into her kit very well and give her honestly a much better rounded kit essentially when it comes to overall terrains. Not to say that sea legs are bad in particular, but Biped definitely has the beat when it comes to overall balance. And her stats across the board are still very nice too. A cumulative HP pool of about 13,000 HP is really, really nice. A mobility of 841 is also fantastic in that upper high tier of where you want to be. Meter resist of 1428 is really, really good for Pisces too, as this means that she can definitely take hits up close and personal without them crippling her or knocking her out easily. Her shoot resist definitely leaves just a little bit to be desired, but definitely not in that. It definitely could be a lot worse than what it is thus far at 896. But with an evade of 1318, this also is going to allow Pisces to be very shifty and very dodgy. So unless she is incapable of dodging, she really won't have a lot of trouble doing so on her own, and honestly can fulfill the role of a stun locker very, very well. That being said, for these reasons, as a pure set score, I do have to rate Pisces as a pretty solid 8.5 out of 10. Even though Charge Drain and Field Control and her normal form really aren't a lot of things to really sneeze at, it's really her meta change where she shines. Not only for the sake of having Commander and 2 stun locking skills, but primarily for the fact that none of her skills require charge to use, which allows Pisces the ability to change back and forth at will based on the particular needs of the battle in specific. As a mixed parts, on the other hand, I actually have to rate her much lower at a 6 out of 10. Primarily for the fact that even though Charge Drain can be a handy skill to make use of, using her as mixed parts will honestly really hinder a lot of the potential that Pisces has, and honestly make her not as useful to use at all, since much of Pisces' primary role in battle, not necessarily as mentioned, is a metaphor staller, but as a stun locker.